So we've got Austin Wiggerman, guy in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Young guy, he's got a ton of knowledge. He's going to share all of his secrets with us tonight.
Every single one.
Let's give him a big Titletown welcome.
You know, it's funny. I always say if the applause afterwards is louder than that, I know I did a good job. So we'll see. They never really tell you that when you sign up to be a guide, you just plan on fishing with a bunch of guys and going out and doing your thing, that you're going to all of a sudden be a public speaker. So it's been a learning experience over the years. But by all means, thank you guys for having me out. I do want to mention I'm beyond impressed of that whole original meeting stuff. I think the fact that you guys are so interconnected with the DNR, spend as much time just learning your fishery and getting involved is huge. I always say you're only as good as your fishery, and I think of all chapters I've spoke to and met, you guys know that pretty firsthand. So that's pretty cool stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was impressive. Wasn't expecting it by all means. So it was one of those antsy moments where you're waiting for your speech in high school and you're like, I don't know I'm ready to go. But it was impressive. So I applaud you guys for that for sure.
Don't expect more for that either.
Oh no, no. Yeah, we'll get back into that later, but I do have a guide special I'll offer you guys for now until the weekend if you guys want to book a trip with me down in Illinois. But and it's funny enough, so Muskie Mayhem Tackle, great people, great company. They usually give me a discount 10% from now until the weekend for all these speaking events. Funny enough, it's obviously the Milwaukee show this weekend, so if you guys make your way there, maybe go say, hey, I was at the Titletown meeting and supposed to get 10% off if I order online, but I'm here in person. Maybe they'll give you a little bit of a discount. Sorry, Carrie and Brad, if you guys, I'm putting you on the spot. Today, daily reminders. Anybody's that ever heard me talk before, it's if there's one slide to listen to and take with you on your fishing, that's probably the most important. I think it's attributed to a lot of my growth in fishing and just continued success. Windows, we know in muskie fishing, windows are wildly important, and being able to kind of forecast, understand a window, and take advantage of it is huge. I'll give you guys a little stuff on pre-spawn muskies. You guys up here, up north, I drove for 5 hours to get here today. It's supposed to be only 3, but only 3 hours south. We got a year-round open season in Illinois. Some awesome opportunities, especially before you guys are able to even think about taking a cast. And then 2024 as a season, how quick, I don't know, a couple of people, was 2024 normal season, harder, better? Anybody have like a crazy good season? Decent, tough? Harder than normal? That seems like a pretty widespread experience, I'd say. So I think just linking 2024 in with a lot of the things we'll talk about tonight is a pretty good example. So number one, what's one thing that you would say clearly differentiates a quote-unquote good angler from a great angler? Answers, applaud, whatever you guys got for me.
Time on the water.
Time on the water is always a consistent answer, which it's peace.
Attention to detail.
God, did you see the slides?
No.
Yeah, you did. I mean, come on, guys. Something about him, that seemed like he already had the framework. But attention to detail is my answer. I think in today's day and age of muskie fishing, which I've been in it probably a lot shorter amount of time than a lot of you guys, and the degree of pressure, the degree of quality of pressure is so exponentially higher and better in today's day and age that your attention to detail really is a big piece of the puzzle that will end up catching you way more fish if you can really just keep an open mind and continue to kind of piece together the little things. So my daily reminders. So again, if there's one slide to pay attention to, this would be it. And this is what I call my daily reminders. It's a notes page that I keep in my phone. And before every time I launch my boat and every day that I take it out, I read through these bullet points And again, it's amazing. It's one of those things that in life, as you learn, as you grow, as you age, as you experience more things, the more you can be reminded or be told something that years ago it didn't make sense, something didn't click, and then all of a sudden something like nailing the basics just sparks a connection that you just experienced today that when if somebody told you something about it 3 years ago, it wouldn't make sense. So this is essentially the red car theory. How many red cars did you guys see on the way here? Probably not that many, but if I told you I'd give you $100 towards muskie stocking for every red car you saw on the drive home, everybody would be able to tell me. So keeping these things in the front of my mind really continues to refresh my lens and just keeps me in the moment and fresh every time I go fishing. So one, nail the basics. It's one thing that I always kind of attribute to any professional in any sport, any area that they're well above the average. They don't have to think about the basics. And in our scenario, it's funny because we don't really have time to practice. I could give a whole seminar on the idea of what I think the funny connection is with fishing and the quote-unquote practice. We're not out in the front yard throwing rubber baits, laying them out at the end of our casts, things like that. The first time you put your bait in the water, it is game time. You don't have the off the game clock scenario. So nailing the basics, learn how to use baits, basic understanding of patterning, seasonal movements, things like that, what to do boat side with these baits. If you can really work on that every cast, be attentive to your fishing, you will in the long run end up being ready, having a plan when that fish is chasing your bait and you got that opportunity for the day. Lures or tools, I say give John Bondi the credit here. In today's day and age, you've got companies like Team Rhino that offer the super special, most beautiful colors under the sun, but lures are simply tools for us. At the end of the day, if you are putting the right tool in the right scenario for the job, most times it's going to get the job done, and it may be a confidence factor for you, it may be whatever, but I can tell you that John Bondi makes baits that catch fish, not fishermen. These fish are only so smart. They're getting smarter, it appears, and every time I go fishing, I feel like they're smarter than I am. But putting the right tool in place for the right job most times will provide you some results. So 3 and 4, attach with what worked before, get good at learning from failures. I always attribute this to, if you're a bass fisherman, you get a lot of feedback. As muskie fishermen, we don't. And a lot of times we lean on our prior successes, our prior fishing as, things that we may do for too long of a time because that's where our confidence lies and that's where we had success prior. As opposed to, if you go fishing and you don't see a fish that entire day, it's not a failure, you learned something. If you don't get off the water on the worst days learning something, then this is going to be a tough sport to ever grow and evolve in because we don't have a lot of information. We don't have that many fish that we catch throughout the year, that many experiences throughout every day on the water, and being able to read between the lines, put pieces of the puzzle together, whether that be electronics or other fishermen networks, things like that, is going to help grow the success throughout the year and seasons after that. New and different works for a reason. I think that's one thing that I attribute to pressure big time. And when I first made this list way back a handful of years ago, I always attributed new and different to bait wise. My example was like prototype baits. Back in the day, the first few people that got the cowgirl before the mass public, those guys were smashing fish. And then, everybody's released to the public in the next 3 years, and it's not as influential. You're still catching plenty of big fish, but putting a new bait in front of a fish or putting a bait in a different situation than they usually see it, whether that be a bucktail over open water, a rubber bait over 3 feet of water, things like that. Those are the little things that I think are simple, but can add up to more and bigger bites for sure. Big fish are not random. When I'm patterning every single day, and I would say it slightly differs when guiding, but in my personal fishing, I'm looking to catch the biggest fish I possibly can every single day, no matter where I'm at. And any interaction with a big fish, I'm going to place way more importance on that interaction, where they came from, what bait they chased, they bit, etc. We'll get into that a little bit further here throughout this slide, but that fish right there, there's a Lake Geneva 50-incher. July, overnight we had tornadoes, we had a crazy cool rain, water temps dropped 3 degrees. I was out until after sunset the night before, got there in the morning, noticed surface temps cooled down big time, and first spot of the morning, that fish was sitting right in a little sand pocket. Our boat was in 34, bait was landing into cabbage, just like a prime A+ spot. But where that fish has come from, I've only seen big fish on, and in that same exact weather scenario where that water temp cools down in summer, they slide right up into that sand. And it's something that you make a point to realize why that big fish was there or what it was doing. It'll definitely help you. Try something new every day. Sometimes this is as simple as finding a new spot to fish. Sometimes it's as simple as fishing the same spot you fished thousands of times from a different angle. I think it continues to show you things, continues to learn. Again, muskie fishing, you can make it as simple or as complicated as you'd like, but as simple as I know there's fish in this weed bed, I usually fish it from this angle, go to the inside edge, get on top of it, do something, show them a new bait, do something new every day just to continue to add those learning points, the new informational bullet points to your catalog of information and pattern. Asking why, I think, is a huge piece to growth in this sport. If you don't, if you catch 5 fish on bucktails out there in the the river, this spring, sure, yeah, it's cool, but why were they where they were? Why did they bite the bait they did? Why did they bite at the time? Did they nip it, etc., which we'll get into as we go here. But it's all things that if you continue to ask why, you continue to try to look for the deeper meanings, you'll get way more out of it. So 2024 for sure was a weird season, right? I think it's funny because as outdoorsmen, as anglers, we really take into account weather as a big influencing factor. And I know especially when you're considering going out on the bay, you got to look at wind, things like that. And I think it's funny too, because if you were to ask any of your friends that don't do anything outside how the weather was last year, they'd be like, oh, it was great. We had warm weather a little earlier than normal, and it stayed nice way late, and yeah, we got to the beach and whatever. They wouldn't really have attributed any crazy differences compared to like what we saw. Being on the water, being attentive, having essentially what we're targeting being very influenced by their moods being very influenced, and movements being influenced by the weather is a pretty crazy and funny thing. So as I saw it, for sure, we had a lot of weird weather patterns through the time frames that you would hope would go fast. And I think everybody is not a fan of the 50-degree range, and I can tell you in northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, it felt like those months on the spring and fall both lasted about a month and a half long. So we got to deal with spawning forever, and then we got to deal with turnover forever. In the spring it was kind of cool. We had some super high water right out of the gates, and we had some insanely good weed growth, some of the best weed growth I've seen right away in March. When I got out on the Fox chain in northern Illinois, we had 4-foot stalks of weeds and 8 feet of water already, which is like unheard of. And it was pretty cool until they did what I guess is their new thing, which is just killing the weeds, and they did a dang good job, and every single weed in the whole northern 5 lakes was gone, and that certainly changed things. Then I went to Geneva, but certainly a different season by all means. Again, saw high water, a lot of early weed growth in warm weather, and my focus down south during that time frame, again, that 50 to 59 degree range just seemed to last forever. And it was, my success was more focused surrounding targeting the fish that were completely done with spawning or not started yet. I think you can get trapped in the going to where they're going to spawn and spending a lot of time fishing where they're spawning, which again, this is kind of a prime example where we're at right now. A lot of fish make their way in, a lot of fish make their way out, and when they're in that true act of spawning, they just don't care about what you're doing. I mean, you guys have probably seen it on the water if they're paired up, etc. They just don't give a shit about your bait, right? And when I see it, and the cool thing about the amount of time I've been able to spend in the pre-spawn time frame down in Illinois, you really get to see the movements and the connection between male and female fish. The male's getting up real shallow really early, and the female's hanging out slightly deeper, and they do their feeding out deep or on the sharper breaks on the way into these spawning locations. And the second they get up shallow, they're essentially impossible to get to open their mouth until they're done spawning and then recouping. Summer was a lot of spread out fish. For me, it was almost like taking a tournament day or a cold front day. It was, I'm gonna put on my most confident baits, I'm gonna cover as much water as possible, and it was tough to find exactly a locational pattern or even bait pattern. In a sense, it was, we're gonna do it all, we're gonna cover as much water, put our baits in front of as many fish as possible, and most times it ended up with one bite, and some days it was three, and a lot of times it was short strikes and you know, moody fish. But fall was good for me, but let's get things really rocking and rolling. So my takeaways for 2024, open to anything, attached to nothing. It was one of those seasons, again, unfavorable weather, weird patterns, weird moods of fish, weird water temp stretches, and the moods of these fish, where you find feeding fish, things like that, things just change so fast. And if we're dwelling on the past, we're fishing memories, we're stuck on our old successes, you're never gonna have that advantage or be the one that comes into the boat launch and goes, yeah, we got 3 today, but we didn't see a fish for the first 6 hours. You gotta continue to adapt, continue to change. And again, simplicity and efficiency. You know, as when I first got into this muskie fishing thing, I was so obsessed with making a different bucktail and different bladed stuff, and no, nothing against, you know, Hunzi tails, because I love the concept, and it's new and different works, right? But at the end of the day, if you're not confident in what you're throwing, I don't think it matters. But is your bait efficiently covering the job that you're looking to do? Are you fishing a, you know, 14-foot deep weed edge and you're throwing a bait that gets down 2 feet? Well, if the fish aren't in the greatest mood ever, that's not going to cover it. So do you have a deep diving crankbait? Do you have a bucktail like your grenade that still covers that bucktail category, but you can get it down to the depth of where those fish are? Things like that. It was pretty much how I spent a majority of my season, was not having all of these complicated baits or choices out, keeping things simple, and doing the majority of my patterning and dialing things in off of simple bait or boat location and structure, things like that, timing. Capitalize on your opportunities, we're going to get into that, and attention to detail. I love this saying, but continuously refreshing your lens. It's like driving on my way here. You know, the snow and the sleet and stuff coming off the road from the cars in front of me covers my windshield. I'm going to use my windshield wipers, and it's a brand new slate, right? Muskie fishing, it's crazy how fast things change. The little environmental cues and things that you can be aware of while you're on the water. You got to continue to say what's going on, what's changed, and why aren't we having success if we aren't. Again, muskies are a weird thing. They're not active all day. So when it comes to windows, weather, and if you're fishing those actively feeding fish or the fish that are not exactly active, every bit of that is pretty much related to the weather. I think the weather or the given day-to-day conditions related to weather is kind of a cool concept, because I think you could almost take and connect some type of way that you're going to approach the day simply off the weather. If you're given flat calm conditions, bright high skies, you're not going to fish that same body of water as the way that you would if you were given overcast 10-mile-an-hour winds, right? It's something that's a simple piece of the puzzle, going back to nailing the basics. you can go fish the way you want to fish, and eventually throughout, you know, the year, the week, the whatever, you'll end up running into fish that that'll bite. But instead of being so attached to what you want to do or the baits you want to throw, really adjusting how you're going to go about fishing with the current conditions that you're given is just it's just a simple, but it's a huge piece of the puzzle. So when I look at this is kind of my simple layout, and of course there's never really a tried and true approach when it comes to muskies by all means. But if muskies are in a positive mood, activity level, I'm looking for something that's efficient. I want to take, and this is that first bullet point there is the big key. I want to take the most productive number of casts in the shortest amount of time. So for me, again, I fish once the water or the ice goes out in March down in Illinois. Well, in the end of March, my most productive number of casts may be a glider, which still takes a minute and a half, 2 minutes to get that bait back to the boat, as opposed to in June, that may be a bucktail where I'm, 30, 45 seconds, and I'm taking twice as many casts in that same amount of time. So taking whatever bait is right for the job, right for the mood, right for the situation, and putting that bait in as many times as you can in the shortest amount of time is certainly what I'm looking to do when those fish are in a positive mood. I'm also looking for good hooking percentage baits, always up to the percentage, whether that be moving those to the front of the boat if you're fishing multiple people, giving that bait the first opportunity to those fish. And then also, I'm a bigger bait guy, never really been a huge small bait guy. Huge small bait guy, there you go, oxymoron. But my English teacher would be proud of that one. Is that right, oxymoron there? That's good. Hopefully she sees this on YouTube. But really, the way I look at it is when they're in a good mood, if I can put a bigger bait out, draws more attention, it's just going to give me more opportunity. If the muskie doesn't know your bait's there, it's never going to have the opportunity. Bigger baits usually push more water, get more attention. And then in the exact opposite scenario, neutral, negative, I want something that's going to stay in their zone, create net, like the reaction strike thing, jerk baits, rubber, those are things I really lean on. Whether that, or just simply speed, especially if they're in small, shallow water, you're looking at, slightly moody fish around the spawn in the river here. Sometimes speed one way or the other can be the ticket, and just getting one to snap and being, having that predatory reaction. And I will say that the bullet point of smaller baits during that time frame can get bit more often than a big one if they're in not the best mood. So there you go. That's Green Bay. That's my first 30 minutes on the water. I get a nice 53-incher ever, and it's blessed me, and ever since it's kind of beat me down afterwards. But getting the most out of your windows is huge. But first you got to know what your windows are, and can you forecast any future and upcoming windows? Because if you can, then you can certainly adjust your fishing prior to that window, during that window, and after that window. And what happens when the planned upon window doesn't produce? Well, then it's time to refresh the lens, get back to the basics, either figure out what you were doing was wrong, or it's just that it wasn't the right timing. There's so many times I've been on the water and I'm planning for this moon to produce, and you fish through the moon and you're like, oh, this is not good. That's not a good feeling, especially guiding. You're like talking it up, and next thing you know, nothing happens. Well, the story at the end of the presentation will kind of bring light to that. But when I look at windows, I'm looking at kind of three main topics or main areas. One being seasonal windows. Two, you got your everyday kind of classic windows, and windows of change. Now the seasonal windows, what I'm really talking about is like big picture time frames that one, either water temps are progressing into classic patterns, say summer peak, or in a lot of, I guess, what we're going to talk about tonight being spawn. I think what's cool about the progression and knowledge of every fish is going to make their way shallow to spawn. You guys probably have more information on that. It may not be every single fish, but the mass population of fish are going to make their way shallow to attempt to spawn, whether they're just going through the motions or it is a successful spawn. And just knowing where they spawn, the travel routes they take there, and anytime you can take a bigger population of muskies, move them into a smaller area or a smaller refined pattern of location, for us anglers, that just ups our odds, right? So idea of seasonal progression, just being aware of when these fish show up on spots. You guys know about it in the summer. You know, again, and I'm kind of speaking slightly off personal experience, but some of those summer spots in August, end of July, you know, when some of those big fish move up, just being aware of those summer peaks or those different seasonal movements and trying to forecast when that happens to be the first one on there. Everyday bite windows, sunrise, sunset, and your moon phases, right? I think we underappreciate the quality fishing that those things, or those two everyday bite windows kind of create. It's amazing to me how many people I watch get off the water at 6 p.m. and the sun goes down at 8, and I get the text from them, you know, it's a tough day, or guys that only fish in the morning. I got two good buddies, and yeah, well, put them on YouTube, Johnny and Wiggins. They're gonna love this, honestly. Every time they're such dedicated morning fishermen, and they're on their way home, and I'm just hooking the boat up to go, and you know, they saw one and I catch 3, and I'm like, if it's not a morning deal, it ain't a morning deal, guys. I know you want to have a few brewskis when you get home, but I said they're biting at sunset good. So it's those things that, sure, when you can stack the factors together, you can really be aware. You can set yourself up for success, finding some fish and really being on the spot you want to be at for those moon phases or that sunrise, sunset. It's only going to up your odds. Now, windows of change, I think this is the most influential piece, and it's what I saw a lot of last year with the unfavorable weather patterns. One, obviously you've got light changes, clouds in and out. I think, I can't exactly relate it to Green Bay, but I'm sure that there's, you know, that's a bite window by all means, it is everywhere. But like where I've seen the light changes make a huge example is clear water systems or fishing suspended fish, basin fish related to pelagic bait fish like Minnesota, Cisco, shad down south here. That light change, whether it be one way or the other, is either going to rise or fall bait fish schools in the water column. And every time that bait fish moves, you're going to have some type of opportunity. These fish are the predators, the highest predators right in the systems, and they take advantage of any possible change. Wind changes, that fish right there, that's on a trolling girl out of Geneva. It was beyond flat calm, like 170 degrees, it felt like all day. We had swam 3 times, and there wasn't supposed to be any pickup of wind, nothing. We were setting things up for sunset, and next thing you know, it just felt that cool breeze hit the back of your neck, and you're like, I was like, and it's actually on film, I should have put it in here, but fishing with a buddy, and I'm like, you know, I wonder if this is going to keep going. The next thing you know, you see the ripples across the lake. I said, grab that troller, we're moving. And we'd seen plenty of fish, but none of them commit, none of them came all the way into the figure 8. Picked the trolling motor up, drove 300 yards to some of the better fish waypoints. First cast, fish flies in, eats in the third turn in the figure 8, and it's like, that fish was in an insanely different mood than it was an hour ago when we saw it. Yet all it took was that slight wind kick up, slight change, that if you're not on top of it, you're not confident enough to realize, oh, that little wind pickup's going to be the difference, and you're going to keep going through whatever spot you're on. It certainly was the difference in that day because that was the only fish we caught, and it's just one of those things. You got to be aware. You got to be trying to take any environmental cues that show themselves. And storm fronts before and after. I think I'll mention this first. So, weather trends, prolonged trends in weather. I think, again, last year we saw a lot of terrible weather, whether it be really flat, calm, and sunny for 5 days in a row, whatever it may be. When those trends happen and fishing's poor, I'm really looking for that next big change, whether it's as simple as a windy day out of the other direction or a big storm front, because you can kind of know that if things have been static and unfavorable and the fish haven't been in great moods, you know that big change coming is going to be when you're going to want to be on the water. Whether it be before, during, or after, those fish are going to go nuts. They really haven't been in a good mood, and that's going to be the next big bite window. But storm fronts before and after, I think everybody knows and talks about, and refers to the prefrontal stuff when it comes to muskies. But I think a lot of times the afterfrontal influence on the system is just as big or important in a lot of cases as the prefrontal. And by that, what I mean is, I'll give you two examples. One, it's Midsummer, Illinois. Again, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I did actually get an article written in Muskie Hunter magazine when it was still printed, which was one of the coolest things ever. Never would have dreamed that as a kid. But anyway, the article was really about, in midsummer down in the southern region, you get a lot of warm weather. And growing up, I read every article under the sun online, Steve Hiding, all these guys that fish these Canadian Shield lakes. And they said cold fronts in the summer are just killer. And it just never really made sense to me. 'Cause every time we'd get a cold rain and a big cold front down in Illinois, the fish would go nuts. And it just never made sense. Well, in that scenario, I put together one of the better big fish patterns in summertime when you get this really cold rain, drop surface temps like crazy, and the fish go nuts. Well, a lot of people are still fishing that shallow water, those shallow weeds, and the concept of shallow, I kind of flipped. And again, it's the mindset thing. It's trying to think outside of the box. And what I mean by that is that surface water cooled down. So you think that all those fish are going to slide up into shallow water to take advantage of that new cool down. Well, shallow to me, I flipped it on my head and went, it's the relationship not from the surface to the bottom, it's the relationship from the fish to the surface. So it cooled down, sure, in the bay over there and shallow weeds over there, but it also cooled the surface across the entire basin of the lake. So when I'm fishing these Illinois waters or anywhere with suspended bait fish schools, a lot of the biggest fish never made their way all the way into shallow weeds. They just went 3 feet under the surface of the basin. And it was one of the coolest things that I realized. It was one of the coolest kind of puzzle pieces that I put together. And it's also one of the things that I'll have a video here later on early spring. Everybody talks about cold fronts being detrimental to early spring fishing. You want to wait till the afternoon, let things warm up, then your shallow water, weed pattern, dark bottom seems to pick up. Well, there's a whole population of fish, sure, that just went negative after that big cold front that are still sitting in that shallow water. But there's some of those fish that have slid out deeper and are now using the basin. There's still fish that are in the basin that aren't affected by it, because what the basin creates and offers is stability in the fact that it has depth. So 8 feet down under the surface didn't get affected by that giant spring cold front. Those are the fish that in that situation, that weather, that day of conditions that you're given, those are the fish that out of the gates are going to be for sure way more likely in being active and biting a bait, as opposed to trying to still target those shallow water fish that got severely affected by that cold front. So just being aware of what's going on around, how that weather impacted your location or population of fish you're fishing, and trying to think outside of the box is it's something that I enjoy, and it's kind of put a lot of puzzle pieces together. There's another one that I caught from Green Bay the first trip ever, which was, those shorts were lucky as can be. They're like about paper mache nowadays, but. So how a muskie eats your bait can help you with understanding more on the window that you're in, or the whole concept of patterning. And it is, it's a really cool thing, and it's one of those situations where taking a second after you catch or release a fish can really give you a lot of details. So maximizing your in-window opportunities, right? What I'm looking for, and again, when I'm patterning, I'm continuously trying to ask why, or trying to figure out the big picture understanding of really what these fish are doing, or what they're going to be doing, or what they were doing, right? So if a fish eats a bait, I'm going to question right out of the gates, what bait did it eat? How was it hooked? Was the fish barely lip hooked? Did it eat the entire bait? Did it eat during the cast, or did it eat in the 8? A lot of times that can give you some keys on boat positioning being either right or wrong. When did it bite? Time of day, moonset, moonrise, sunrise, sunset, things like that. And how big was the fish? Again, big fish are not random. If a big fish completely engulfs the bait, there's a lot of things that tells. One, you either nailed everything, timing, presentation, bait choice, or simply that may be the hot bait. I know there's a lot of times that for a season or two, if I catch a really big fish on a bait pretty early in the year, whether that be just I'm throwing a bait that I don't see a lot of people throw on my pressured waters, it kind of just continues as a pattern. If I'm ever ever have doubt or I'm losing confidence, I'm gonna just have somebody throwing that bait because it just seems like it continues to produce. So this though is a perfect unpacking of a window. This correlates with light changes and really just trying to read what's going on within the system, right? So this is a mid-September day. Has everybody heard of Lake Geneva or know of Lake Geneva? I mean, if you haven't been out there, I don't care what you say. If you've been on a clear body of water, I want you to tell me the name of it because it is insanely clear. You can see the bottom in 30 feet of water when you're above sand. It is one of the clearest places I've ever fished in my life, right? Which makes for some awesome fishing, but a lot of people will certainly get scared off when it's a sunny day. So anyway, mid-September, day after the new moon, and for the year I really haven't had that much success in morning hours, but I had some good clients, good sticks, and we had a morning moonrise, and I said, all right, let's just give her, right? So sunrise 6:30, got out there at 7, moonrise was at 8, and I think right away, I mean, it was prime. It was overcast, still had about a 10-mile-an-hour breeze, and we saw maybe a mid-30s right at the peak of moon. And we fished and fished and fished, and I'd been on fish really well throughout that whole week, and I was like, this is super weird. This is it's one of those things, again, as a guide, you're like, this is not the best feeling. You get out there for that moon, and oh well. So we continue to fish, and as the day progresses, we're getting towards midday, and I can see in the distance just the end of the clouds and just bright sun, and I'm like, oh boy, it's not gonna time out for any moon phase when that happens, things like that. And I just kind of said to my guys, I said, let's just keep some productive baits in the water. We're gonna keep running spots, and I said when that light change comes in, we're gonna go back on the fish that I've been on this whole week, which we had already fished for the day and didn't respond, and we'll see what happens, right? So that graph follow on that last slide was on my bait. We're all throwing bucktails, 3 in the boat. I'm the third bait through. I'm basically just getting these blades rolling. It was in 23 feet or 24 feet of water, whatever it was, and I didn't even get to see the fish. So that's how you know how low it was in that really clear water, right? Well, as that light change is happening, that's the first interaction. Second interaction, second bait through, mid 30-inch fish comes in, turns off at the boat. I'm like, okay, things are starting to happen. We're progressing through the spot further. First bait through, ends up blind figure 8, tiny fish comes up, eats the back hook, barely hooked off. And I'm like, all right guys, this is it. Like we clearly just fished through what felt like it should be prime. We got out here for a moon. We're throwing the same baits that we've been catching on, but it didn't happen. I said that was already way better interaction in the last 20 minutes from these fish, whether they be small or not. I said, window's open. I said, let's go. So right away when that fish had got off from the front guy's bait, I'm blind figure 8 and talking to him. And he goes, you got one. And I look over and my rod's doing this. And I'm like, oh, okay, switch. That was that fish. So 10:40 a.m., whatever size fish that was, first fish in the boat. So again, attention to detail. After I caught that fish and after that fish got off on that front bait, it barely nipped it. It was a small fish, but it was the beginning of the window. That fish ate in the figure 8 that I just caught, and it was hooked. I'll make it up. We'll say just completely engulfed the back hook of the 2 hooked bucktail, right? So when a fish is barely hooked, I'm either thinking it's outside of the window and you just created that fish a reaction strike, speed, whatever. It might be conditioned the bait before. If they used to eat cowgirls down their back doors, now they're eating them kind of normal or lip hook. There's a lot of these pressured fish, these conditioned fish, they get caught a lot of times and are recycled. They will eat a bait less often or less intently that they've been caught on or had negative experiences before. Again, speed of retrieval could have been off. You could have triggered that fish better, or bait category was good, but there may be better option, size, color, etc. So to finish this window, a couple more casts. Scott, who is the luckiest human I know, he ends up getting just crushed mid-cast. He's throwing the bait that's been getting shot all week. Crushed mid-cast. It was one of the hardest fighting, highest jumping 48-inch plus fish I've ever seen. The thing went shoulder height, midway out there, got off, and he was just destroyed. He was on a slump. That was going to be his slump buster. He was down in the boat sitting on his knees. And now I got to be as a guide, I got to be a life coach, I got to be a motivational speaker. I said, Scott, you fished all morning with us, right? I said, you just saw the progression. These fish are in a better mood. They're biting now. That one just crushed you, big fish. I said, all you got to do is just start casting again for the next 25 minutes, and it'll be worthwhile, right? Well, he gets up 2 casts later, catches this awesome mid 40-inch fish, same bait, absolutely annihilated it. Every hook was just destroyed. Had to cut all the hooks, release that fish, and that was 20, 15 minutes after I caught that first one. I rebuilding the hooks. I passed my bait up that I caught that fish on earlier in this window. Middle guy, he's casting that. Oh, sets the hook, and before you know, he's got an upper 40-inch fish that's still nipping this bait that it's already eaten twice, all the way into the figure 8. Goes around a few times, and then realizes like, oh, I just about, lucked up a little bit. So he turns off, and then we go another 15, 20 feet, and the low 40-inch fish kind of turns off early, and I go, well, that was it. That was the rise, the peak, and the fall of the window. And again, when I'm really looking at patterning, when I'm really trying to evaluate what's going on and how to take advantage of it most, we could have given up on the pattern that I was on all week. It was a blade bite, it was really good, and we could have, throughout, after spending that good moon, those quality conditions, just went and explored and done a bunch of other things. But instead, I just brought my boat to different locations. We changed speed, and we kept productive baits moving through productive spots and let the fish tell us when they were ready. Now, if we would have gone through midday and that light change and still didn't have the success, we certainly would have changed. But keeping things simple, not wasting time and looking for something crazy new or out of the ordinary that hasn't been producing, and really letting the environmental cues keep you in productive spots and set yourself up for success was the reason that window could have been something really special, but ended up only getting a few fish out of. But again, when fish are biting the bait mid-cast, it's mid-window. I've got so many cool GoPro segments of us catching a few in the figure 8, and then they're biting mid-cast, and then you catch another one figure 8, and window's done. Being aware of that, kind of doubling down or changing, if you're with multiple people and it's one bait that's kind of hot, changing more of the baits to that bait category or whatever to just really get the most out of that window. And when it's back on the backside or falling off, have somebody switch back over to that start-stop, that more reactionary, something that gets that last second, that last good piece of those fish in a good mood for that window to hopefully react to. But again, when they're eating a bait like that, you kind of know that you got it dialed in, and it's something that keep on the end of that line. Rise and fall of the window, yeah. Again, we already nailed all that. All right, so pre-spawn stuff. Pre-spawn is one of the coolest time frames that I've ever experienced, and it's one that when I was really getting into muskie fishing, I really didn't have the opportunity to spend as much time as I do nowadays fishing. One being school, work, things like that. And for like you guys don't have the opportunity to, but for us down in Illinois, it offers some of the best and most consistent opportunity at some of the biggest fish in our systems and state itself. Again, when you're looking at these pressured fish, this was probably my 8th cast of the season last year. Why I'm out on the lake at 10:50 at night was because it was 80 degrees that day, and it was really the first day that I had the opportunity. I golfed in the morning, shot a clean one over at a buddy's private course. Felt like a great day, and I said, screw it, I'm going. It's a beautiful night. Fortunately, I had to celebrate this one by myself because my buddy was about 20 minutes from the launch, and then we didn't catch one, which happens all the time. But it is one very special time frame. But why I'm bringing it up tonight in this conversation, this talk, is because pre-spawn is one of those time frames that the little details, if you can be aware of them and notice them when they're happening, can be the difference between success or failure, and can be the difference between you having the confidence to make that change or not. Again, the way I attribute it and connect it to last season in general was last season had such weird weather, instability throughout the system was crazy, the unfavorable weather, the unfavorable moods of these fish, and really being able to focus on what influencing factors offer you either a better locational pattern or different area of the lake to hopefully find fish in the right mood is kind of how it seemed like you either found success or not. You could see fish all day, but if you didn't find the right pack of fish or right depth or right structure of fish in biting moods, you're going to waste your time throughout the whole day kind of setting yourself up with following an inactive fish. So again, this is stuff that affects all season long, but it's super influential in the spring. Water temp, what wind does to the water temp, the trend of the water temp, again, as I use that example of early spring cold front, that shallow water gets really impacted really harshly by a cold wind or a cold front, as you know, the trend of that water temp in that shallow water is technically negative, yet if you target those deeper fish that are unaffected and using that basin as stability and have that depth factor to it, that's the type of stuff that being aware of and taking advantage of certainly helps. So here's a couple stories. So I just love how thick they are. You never know if they're 38 or 48 because they just look like a big meatball. But this story lined up where I had a good, which I call him a good buddy now, but he's a guide in northern Wisconsin up by, I think he's Eagle River area, not Namakagon area, but his name's Tom Colling. I didn't know him really before this last year, but he got a hold of me and he said, I'm looking to come down in April, fish muskies. He said, I got a group of us 4, and it's a buddy's bachelor party. We really don't care if we catch fish. We just want to get out and have a good time. I said, all right, absolutely. So I wrangled my one buddy who has fished with me and grown up fishing muskies, knows the fox chain really well, and we went out as a 2-boat team. So as we went into that week, it was the first week the whole system really turned on. But the pattern again was glide baits, little twitch baits, and main lake weeds. Again, we had crazy good weed growth right out of the gates. We had high water, and that was really the only seemingly population of fish that were active and biting. And we were catching a handful of fish a day. They were just, if you caught a 34 or 36, it was a good day, right? And I would say the majority of my pre-spawn fishing is for fish of that quality. It's usually deeper breaks or suspended fish, targeting those females as they make their way in. And they were out there. I saw them on side imaging, spent plenty of time casting at them, but up until this point they had just done 0%, you know, positive feedback or biting or interactions, right? So we start the day. I don't even know what all these you know, things say, but I'll get the story out if you guys are trying to read it and can't read it. But anyway, we start the day out. I tell them as we're idling off from the launch, like, that's the pattern, that's what we're going to do. And they're experienced muskie guys. They've caught tons of muskies, and they look at me and they're like, God, I'm coming down here. It's nice that I'm throw a freaking glide bait. That's not the thing I want to do. And I'm just like, you know, well, we're gonna start. He's like, we'd rather not catch one and just go target some of those basin fish you told us about. Well, I'm like, we'll start there. So we take the first pass with my boat. I think we had 5 fish eat gliders, and one almost jumped in the boat, and the biggest one might have been this big, right? And they're like, all right, like we did it. You know, that was fun, but like, let's try and go catch a big one, right? So for the next probably 6 hours straight, between my boat and the other boat, we targeted open water fish. We had a midday moon that we fished into and through, and rain incoming in and out, and none of those factors, none of those changes made any difference in the response from fish. I think their boat had 1 lazy follow out of all the fish that we casted over in the basin throughout all those times. So what we did is we went to lunch, grabbed a few beers, had some burgers, and went back out, and I said, guys, as much as we want to target those big fish. I said, let's just recheck some shallow stuff. I said that we can waste our time all day, but I said, let's at least bounce back and forth and make sure that we got a good tapped into the moods of these shallow fish, right? So we hit one little spot by where we get lunch, saw probably 4 fish, and some of them were low to mid 40s, and they were way hotter, way in a much better mood. And I said, that was different. I hadn't seen that big a fish up on that weed edge yet, hadn't seen that big a fish in that mood yet. And I said, let's get out of here. So we did take one more little pass, had another chance, and we ran all the way back to where I had been, where these big fish slide into before actually making their way to go up to spawn. And there's this one, it was amazing how the weeds grew in. You could take this perfect little in and out pass down this deep weed edge of the bay. And I think we had 12 or 14 fish dialed in. I mean, it was like every 15 feet, there's another one, there's another one. And we ended up losing one on a suic, but they were just stacked, and some really big ones too. And I said, all right, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to set things up for the sunset window. I said, if they haven't bit now and they're coming in and they're in the good mood, I said, we fished through a lot of different conditions today. I said, these big fish slid up, they're going to bite before they end up spawning. I said, they're here, they're in a good mood, let's set it up for sunset. So we set it up for sunset, and we're already 5 casts in, and I'm like, we should have seen one by now. Now we're 10 casts in, should have seen one. We're throwing the same baits that we were earlier. There's no life on the graph, nothing. Now we're 20 casts in, and I'm like, something's changed, but we got to at least finish the spot, right? So we finished the spot, not even a sign of life. And there's really only 2 ways they can go. They can go maybe another half a cast length shallower, or in the basin behind me. And there was nothing in the basin behind me earlier in the day. And I said, all right, guys, you guys got to trust me. Grab those rods with the basin baits, which was just Medusas and tubes. I put the trolling motor on 100, went about 200 yards. Oh, there's a shad ball, there's a shad ball, there's a suspended muskie. First 3 casts, I think we moved 2 mid-40s. Then mark a really big one off the other side, and the way I have my boat set up, I only cast off the left side. Rods are on the right side and everything, and Tom fires one over my shoulder. I said, you should probably come back here and figure 8, because it's usually a shit show if you hook one up there with all the rods. He's figure 8 and see it on side imaging. I said, you got one down there, and it's right at that time frame where you take your glasses off or don't, but either way, you really can't see shit. So I'm pretty much using the side imaging, and I go, oh yeah, she's still there, and he goes, oh, I see her, and he's popping the Medusa around like you normally would, and I said, just do it like a bucktail. He's like, all right. So he goes straight through the turn, hangs it, fish comes up, eats the tails, full another turn, engulfs the whole thing, sets the hook. I go to grab the net, comes off, and they were ecstatic, which, again, I was super sad because it was a probably 30 to 35 pound class fish, first really big fish that ate, and it got off. But again, they had never casted muskies. They had never casted muskies in April, so they were just stoked to even see a few, let alone hook one. And Tom goes, which is hilarious, and I'm sure you guys can relate to. That's the first time that anyone's told me to do anything during the figure 8 and have it work. Most of the time the fish just run away, right? And it is something that I will say that if I'm working a rubber bait and I'm popping it around the first few turns and they do not respond, and this pretty much goes for every bait category, I just turn it into a bucktail, stall it at the turns, and go. I don't care if it's a suic, I don't care if it's a glider. It's produced so many more fish for me as opposed to continuing to pop it around. Now, if you're on St. Clair, sure, maybe keep popping it around, but a lot of our fisheries I've seen, they don't commit right away. Go ahead and change it over like a bucktail, and a lot of times it works. So what did it teach me? The pattern can be one thing, whether it be size clash and location. Like I said, main lake weeds, little fish were going. Then all of a sudden, the big fish really turned on. They made that little extra movement shallow. They turned on. You can pretty much set yourself up for an expected window. We had all these fish dialed in. I had waypoints, I had casting angles down this weed edge, and you plan all day long and set yourself up for success, and then you go for it, and everything's gone, and you got to reshuffle the cards and throw everything out the window and react by what information you're getting. If we would have just made that pass again or changed baits, I don't think we would have seen anything, had any success or bites. Yet we threw everything out the window. Like I said, open to anything, attached to nothing. we had tried, we targeted suspended fish, we'd done it, I'd done it all week, no response. Now we find all these bigger fish on the weed edge, in a good mood, set ourselves up, and everything goes away. Had to be confident, had to make that decision quick to give ourselves that opportunity. Ultimately, we had the right timing, it just was the wrong location for that moment. All right, a couple more slides, and we're out of here. But then we got to go. We got to do that whole meeting again, though, because I want to dial that in on how you guys can. Again, 2024 for me was really just a shifting in the mindset, trying to find confidence in the simplicity and efficiency of things. It was a tough year, again, like we've all discussed and agreed upon, and just dictating how you're going to go about fishing fish by the conditions you're given is really the way that I found the most success. Big picture for me, adapt to changes, go find the bite rather than waiting for the bite to come to you. Control your own success. I think it's a great way for us as muskie fishermen to kind of get out of it what we really feel like, because the muskies are never going to find you as fast as you can find them. So here's a quality example of the basin bite. In April, we just had 11 inches of snow. Perfect, it's sunrise, perfect conditions for what you'd like to say. You Google and say that's the bite window for an early spring day. No, it's not, but we unthawed the cover, got out there for sunrise, and we took a trolling pass to mark a bunch of suspended fish on side imaging. As we put the boat in neutral, we marked one on either side, and I grabbed the rod that the bait would sink. So give me a break on that figure eight with the trolling leader and everything. It was a Poseidon with a dozer attachment, but this is in the dead middle of the lake. Again, it is sunrise in April after 11 inches of snow overnight, and that fish had gone around so many times, so hot that Sam had enough time to start the GoPro, turn it around before it actually ate. And I can guarantee you that if we would have started shallow where some of the fish had been sliding up, those fish would have been in a negative, terrible mood and not nearly as hot and aggressive and active as that. And as that day progressed again, we caught the next fish. We caught 4 that day. Next fish was in the basin again. Second fish was mid-afternoon on the flat coming from a basin, and the last fish was right before sunset in the shallow weeds. So the overall concept of the warming, wait for the afternoon, related to the shallow early spring bite isn't wrong, but if you wait all day, you're wasting your whole morning, you're wasting the ability to adapt and make the change to find the active fish or active groups of fish. So again, this was a classic day in April. Basically everything that when you Google what you want for weather-wise in early season, it would not have qualified. Super cold, super windy, water temps decreasing all day. Fish in the top left was on a 10-inch bar fighter in 40-degree water temps. Classic small bait spring thing, right? No, but it was the only fish and only spot in the whole handful of lakes that we fished that a little bit of warm water pocket had been blown, and it was not windy enough and it was calm enough that that little bit of sun warmed up the surface temps. That fish slid into this dark bottom bay, ended up biting, and again, we wasted our sunset window. That's a whole other story. But before we drove back to Wausau, this is Sandstone, if anybody knows or has heard of them. Before we drove back to Wausau from down in Illinois, there was a snowstorm that was coming in at midnight, and we said they got a bite. That same wind had relocated a warm water pocket on a sharp inside sand turn. There was bait fish loaded. It was great, and right in the moon window, right after dark, Sam caught that beautiful 43-incher. He replaced the hooks. I spun the boat around. He took 2 more casts, sets the hook again, goes, this one's bigger, and there's his PB from Illinois. And again, so many big fish. That first one that I caught this past year, that one for him. Nighttime, spring, not really classic conditions or timing, all related to pressure fisheries, thinking outside of the box, doing things that most people aren't doing. There's a beautiful example of that actually there. Fox River, everybody's throwing blades. Sam took about 3 casts with a 9-inch unweighted Wolf Creek swim bait right out of the trees. Beautiful mid-upper 40-inch fish. But location, how quickly can you find your fish? whether that be electronics, whether that be interaction with the baits, lure choice. Lures are tools. Pick the right tool for the right job. You'll have way more success as opposed to throwing your favorite new color or whatever. And timing. It comes down to, can you fish the spot that you want to fish, when you want to fish it, how you want to fish it. Boat control, distance from the structure, things like that. You will get the most out of your windows, and the windows only come for so long and or stay around for so long, so you got to be aware. You got to pick up on information as quick as possible. And again, all of that is huge and essential. And thank you. By the way, the guide offer, if you guys want to book a trip with me in April, I still got a handful of days left open. I'm doing $100 off full day trips. I'm 500 a day, so it's 400 a day. I catch my biggest fish out of Illinois every year in April with some pretty special, cool stuff. So if you guys book from now until the end of the weekend, $100 off for you guys, and maybe you'll catch sometimes the biggest fish of the year right out of the gates. So now, thank you.
Nice job.
I think that was a little quieter, actually. That's kind of sad. The applause earlier was definitely louder.
So that video you showed,
Yeah.
do you always do that many figure eights, or did you know that fish was there?
Yeah. So again, we were trolling in the basin, and we put the boat in neutral, turned it off, and I'm in the back, and I noticed on side imaging there was one on either side. So I was reeling it in. I ripped it a few times, and I saw the thing just hauling behind it. So I was just figure eighting it literally because I saw it, but I kind of make a joke. Make sure to figure eight your trolling baits because you never know. But no joke, I bet you it went around 20 turns as hot as you could be, and it was hilarious with the super flexible trolling rod and a 36-inch leader. I felt like an idiot, and it ended up being a cool clip. But yeah, I definitely don't always figure eight that many times by all means, but in that scenario I saw it coming.
Interesting.
Is the fox chain bananas during that time frame of year too?
Like early season boating traffic you're talking?
Yeah.
No, I would say come May is really, like maybe the end of May is when I don't ever even realize there's any boats out there because I'm used to Geneva, and the chain is like my kind of intro to musky fishing, right? But no, I mean, April's a great time frame for just fishing, and like the recreational traffic's pretty much minimized, and then like same thing with Geneva. I mean, opener May into June's pretty much non-existent, and September and on is non-existent for recreational. But if you want to go to Geneva on July 4th, you can see what 4 or 5 foot waves look like in no wind and in the middle of the day. It's really fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've been on the fox chain when that happens too.
Yeah, the fox chain is just not as much water for boats but the boats get bigger when you get on Geneva. So it's fun. But actually I've seen it, and I've seen it on Geneva especially, but it happens a lot on the fox chain as well. The recreational traffic truly creates like bite windows and gets those bait fish schools, especially when they're high over open water. It just mixes them up. It's like short line trolling in a sense, right? You're kind of dispersing that bait ball, and the muskies take advantage of it. I've caught so many muskies throwing a bait. It would land into the boat if I didn't time it to have it, drive past me, but landing a bait right behind the boat and in their prop wash. It's like the muskies know that's when it's easiest to find a, little screwed up bait fish or disoriented. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, but yeah, again, that's my schedule. I kind of come middle May and start of June, I kind of focus and switch over to Geneva for sure. Illinois, the fox chain's an awesome fishery. It always is, but it just gets warm so fast, and I like taking advantage of the big pre-spawn heavy fish and fish before they've been caught for 5 times every year. But Geneva's turned into one heck of a fishery, and then I do spend a month out in Minnesota. I know you guys got some super big fish, but it's nice for me spending too much time in Illinois to head out to Minnesota for a month and see some 50-inchers, pretty much every day. So if you guys are at all interested or have any questions about anything, I've spent too much time muskie fishing that I don't even think I realize I know I've spent that much time. My graph hours would make you think I have some issues.
Any questions for Austin?
Yeah. And otherwise, my phone number is 815. Yeah, you guys can text me, call me. I mean, I'll talk fishing any day. Any questions? I love these stupid fish. That's the reason I don't have a wife and kids and sleep in my truck some nights. And you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me out for sure. Glad I did, and good group, and continue doing what you're doing for the club. I think you guys do an awesome job for sure.
Let's give him a big
water down there now. What?
There's not currently. Most of the time, I would say ice goes out first between the 5th and the 15th of March. And I used to not run guide trips until April 1st, but every year it seems like the bite gets better and better. So the second I can get my boat out there, the second I start pretty much running trips. It's not something I gotta like dial in before I offer trips. They're pretty much right where I know they're at. I think this is gonna be a big fish year though. I don't know if everybody's still sulking on last year, but I think this year's gonna be super good for some reason. Stoked about it. Yeah. Well, that was fun.
Let's give him a big round of applause.